We have secured a plane to repatriate Canadians who so wish to come back. Now, the next step, obviously, is to work on the diplomatic front and the logistics, obviously, with our Chinese counterparts. We are engaging in discussion as we speak. And I also want to advise Canadians that we have changed our travel advisory to advise Canadians to avoid non-essential travel to China. So, en français, écoutez, on a maintenant 160.
So now we have 160 Canadians who have requested consular assistance in China. We have secured an aircraft that could bring those Canadians who wish to leave back to Canada. Obviously, we're working closely with the Chinese authorities to obtain the necessary diplomatic authorizations as well as deal with the logistics. And I want to advise Canadians that we have changed our travel advisory, saying that Canadians should avoid all non-essential travel to China.
Are you going to be holding them when the Canadians come back? Are you going to be holding them in isolation for a period of time?
So that is also part of the processes that we're working out. If François-Philippe had lowered this so far, I don't know how to raise it. Someone else will have to do it. I'll start over. So part of the process now is figuring out exactly what our protocols will be when we return Canadians that wish to come home. And we're working very closely with our U.S. counterparts who obviously have some experience in this and have set up some best practices. And we'll be following their lead very closely. And we'll have more to say as those processes unfold.
The World Health Organization, les Québécois qui sont en Chine, qu'est-ce que vous faites de...
Répète dans la on va aller.
Le Québec veut rapatrier les Québécois qui sont en Chine.
Alors, j'ai parlé aux autorités québécoises aujourd'hui, juste avant.
Quebec authorities. I talked to them just before this press conference. I informed them of the actions we would be taking. I had a call with the Foreign Affairs Secretary of the United Kingdom, so we're really well coordinated. I put a call out to the minister in Quebec to let them know what measures we'd be taking to repatriate Canadians.
Today issued some advice to countries that are indeed evacuating citizens from China. What can you specifically draw from the advice given today from the World Health Organization in terms of what Canada's plan needs to look like?
Well, I have not seen that specific evidence, and I'm happy to come back once I've reviewed it. I'm also very comforted by the fact that Dr. Tam is, as I mentioned, an expert advisor to the World Health Organization. They will be having a meeting tomorrow, and we'll have more to say at that point.
M. Martin n'est pas en Chine présentement. Est-ce que toutes les ressources nécessaires
oui,
sont
oui.
à la disposition des Canadiens?
Il n'y a pas d'inquiétude pour les Canadiens et les Canadiennes à avoir. Je suis en contact avec
I've been in contact with Ambassador Barton every year. We have the necessary teams on the ground to offer a whole range of consular services. Now, people watching at home must understand that this is a dynamic situation. We're talking about 160 Canadians who have now requested consular assistance, and we've been in contact with them. Now, what we have to do now is deal with the logistics and the diplomatic authorizations with the Chinese authorities. When might that plane leave? Well, I can tell you, and the minister and I will be back to inform Canadians when we have new information, but we have secured a plane to bring Canadians back who wish to return. And in the case of every other country, once we've secured the plane, we have to work diplomatically to get the necessary authorizations to land the plane and also organize the logistics, because people have to understand that that city, there's reduced traffic, it's very tightly controlled, so we have to work with the Chinese authorities to deal with the logistical side of things.
In English. So what I was saying, and then we'll go to you. So what I was saying is just that once you have secured an airplane, which what we did yesterday, and I was in touch even with the CEO of the company. So the plane is secured. Now that's step one. After that, obviously in parallel to that, we need to work with the Chinese authorities with respect to the authorizations you need to bring the plane, obviously, in China, but also work on the logistics. Canadians understand, and once you have a plane that you could repatriate Canadians, those who wish to be repatriated, then we need to work on the logistics because, as you know, the city is on lockdown. So we are talking. I just finished a call with the Minister of International Relations of Quebec. I just literally finished a call with Secretary Rabb of the United Kingdom. We are all coordinating. We're all talking to each other to make sure that, as Minister Aidu said, we learn from best practices. We are coordinating, and we'll come back to you as soon as we have more to say with respect to the next steps. Now we're working together.
Of the 160 Canadians that have asked to be repatriated, do we know if any of them are sick?
I cannot answer that question right now, but we will ensure, because as I told you yesterday, we are in touch with them. We are asking these questions, but there will be a process as we're looking at repatriation. There'll be a process, obviously, which has been applied by other countries as well. So as more, when we have more on that, we'll certainly come back to you.
What's Canada's company? What's the company? You said that.
Well, it's a charter airline. Let's say it's a charter airline. It's not going to be a military aircraft. It's a charter airline specializing on repatriation.
Are you looking at scenarios where you would be putting these 160 Canadians into, say, a military base or something like that?
So the first and foremost thing to remember is that we will always work to ensure the health of Canadians, whether they're abroad or whether they're here. So yes, what we're looking at is a scenario where we have all the measures in place to protect Canadians from exposure to the virus. And having said that, that's about as far as I can go, because we know that, for example, the U.S. has a process that's working very efficiently, and that is working in a very similar way that we're working on the virus in our domestic approach. So we'll come back to you with the steps as we develop them further.
But among the options, you're saying you're looking at military bases. Are you also looking at just sending these people home and letting them deal with it on their own? And then I have another question, because I don't know if I'll get my turn again. Yesterday, you couldn't really answer whether people who are already sick in China would be allowed to board the plane back. Have you figured that part out? And then, Monsieur Champagne, est-ce que c'est une question d'heure ou de jour?
Are we talking about hours or days to make this happen?
So in terms of the questions around the processes, I will not speculate at this point what exact process will be in place, other than to say that the goals of the process will be to protect the health of Canadians, both here in Canada and the health of Canadians who are returning. In terms of your second question, will people be allowed to come back if they're sick? These are the conversations that we're having with our partners, including China, to determine how, in fact, people are allowed to board and what the processes are. Obviously, some people may be engaged with the medical system, and that's the hard work that Minister Champagne and his team are doing to determine what support people need. Let's remember that not everybody in China that's on the list of people that would like support want to come back to Canada. In fact, as I said yesterday, some of the concern is around supplies that might be running out, challenges moving around the region, being separated from families that might be in another part of the region. And so Minister Champagne's team is doing a thorough job trying to understand the numbers of people that want to come back, as well as what other kinds of ways we can support Canadians in a very difficult situation where mobility has been essentially cut off from other parts of the country.
Monsieur Champagne, just a second. Sorry, he didn't answer the question.
So, votre question,
Yes. Your question was about the number of days this could take. Now, I'm just looking at what happened in other countries. It took a number of days before those countries were able to deal with the authorizations and logistics. So that was the time it took. We have been in contact with Chinese authorities in order to secure those diplomatic authorizations and deal with the logistics.
How many days, and the only thing I can say to Canadians, I can reflect on how many days it took for the U.S. and for the others who had plane landing there. It took a number of days because you need to work out on the diplomatic side, you need to work out on the logistics side. But what we're going to be making sure in the meantime, and Minister Aidu said it very eloquently, we're going to provide all the consular assistance to the people. We're keeping them updated. We're talking to them almost on a daily basis. So we will inform Canadians, and from those who have requested consular assistance.
Why is it so much longer than other countries to get to this point?
Well, I would disagree with you because I was in touch. I was in touch with all the others, sir, and I will tell you, Canada is at the forefront of the response. We are talking with the allies. The only plane which has landed is a U.S. plane which was scheduled to be there. The other one is Japan this morning. I've talked to my counterparts. We're in touch with everyone, and I can assure you that the government of Canada is there to respond to this consular emergency that Canadians want there, and we will continue to do so. We're using best practices. Like I said, you need to tailor the response with the need of the people. We have now 160 Canadians who need consular assistance. We're in touch with them. We're assessing their needs. I would say we're responding appropriately. We have a plane secured like the other nations, and now we're working like the international community to get the landing permission and obviously the logistics.
Who is? And if I could just add to that, I think what's important to remember is at the beginning of this, we didn't actually have a fulsome picture of who was in the region because so many people were not registered. So we actually didn't have a sense of what the number of Canadians from our particular side of the records. And so I think the work that we've been doing to make sure that people know that they need to register and that they need to reach out so that we can actually find them has been has directly resulted in the rise of numbers that are people.
Who is going to pay?
Listen, the first and foremost thing now is to help Canadians.
So
With
is it
respect to the
taxpayers
cost, I would
who-
say we've not spent much time on that yet. The focus now is offering the consular assistance to every Canadian who needs that. We'll get back to you with the details.
And I would add that I think, listen, Canadians expect us to protect their safety and their health. And, I agree with my colleague. This is premature to talk about what budget line this is going to come from, but I'm pleased to live and represent a country that believes that we need to take every action to protect the health of Canadians in the face of a global situation like this.
And that was the Minister of Health and the Foreign Affairs Minister, Patty Hajdu, and François-Philippe Champagne confirming that the federal government has secured a charter aircraft that will go to China and pick up and bring home those Canadians who want to come back to this country, who have registered with Global Affairs Canada. There are 160 people in the Wuhan region, which is the epicenter of this coronavirus outbreak, who have asked for consular assistance, whether or not those who are sick are going to be able to come back. Some of the logistics of how long it'll take to get that plane there, the diplomatic issues are still to be seen. But the CBC's Karina Roman joins us now from Ottawa. So that is the big question that a lot of reporters have been asking for a few days now. Are you sending a plane? Is there a plane that is going to pick up those Canadians who want to come home?
Yeah, yesterday the question was, what are you going to do? And it was all options on the table. It was, do we send our own plane? Do we hitch a ride with other countries? So obviously the headline out of that news conference is that we are sending a plane, that we've secured a plane for the Canadians who want to come back. Obviously there are logistic problems that they have to figure out. If people can't move around the region, how do you even get them to the airport to get on the plane, and how do you test people if you have to test them to see whether they're sick or not to make that determination, because that was another unanswered question. We don't know if people are sick, are they going to be allowed to get on that plane, or are they going to be having to deal with their illness in China. So still lots of questions remaining on that, but the big news being that we are going to be sending a plane, but they do need to get the authorization to land in China, to take off from China. You can't just, take a plane and fly into someone else's country, especially if it's a charter. So there's things still to be figured out. I did note towards the end of that news conference as well, Champagne a bit defensive over whether Canada has been slow compared to other countries, him insisting that we're at the forefront, that the only other plane that has landed so far is a U.S. plane that was previously scheduled, and today a Japanese plane. So trying to make the case that Canada is not lagging behind, despite some of the complaints that we've heard from Canadians who feel stuck and abandoned, is the word that some of them have used, in China.
We also don't know. Another key question is what happens to those Canadians who come back on that plane? Where do they go? And we heard from the health minister saying that they're going to follow U.S. protocols. I don't know exactly what that means, but there are questions like, where do these people the passengers just come off the plane and go home, or what exactly happens? And so it's
do they isolate themselves at home, or do we make use of military bases so that we can be assured that they follow isolation protocols? I know there's been talk of in a UK paper there was talk of a waiver that anyone who wants to come back had to sign that they would agree to an isolation at a military base. So again,
if you're sick, if you're sick in Wuhan, in the Wuhan area right now, are you allowed to get on that plane? That was also a question.
Yeah. So we don't know the answers to that. Patty Hajdu saying, you know, that their overriding principle is to protect everyone's health, both the people here who don't want people coming and, you know, bringing the disease over, but also the people who want to come back and if they need medical treatment, you know, that they could get it here. Again, she said she will keep us updated on that, but those are things obviously they're still trying to work out, and, you know, promises that they will keep us informed of that. But I'm sure the people who are waiting to know whether they can get on that plane or not would like answers to that pretty soon.
They've also, and I believe that this shows that they're concerned, they've advised Canadians to avoid all non-essential travel to China. I believe that that is a change.
Yeah, you know, yesterday also, Patty Hajdu actually talked a bit about travel status, saying that as they make something more restrictive, it's not just about the prevalence of the virus, which, as you have reported all day about the numbers climbing in China to 6,000. Obviously, there's worries about, you know, getting ill if you're there, but it's also just, you know, if you go over there and you're in that region, you can't move around. You might not even be able to get supplies or, you know, get food, or so, you know, why would you go there if you don't actually have to? Which is why it's been recommended that all non-essential travel just don't go.